Hello and welcome to Sports Opinion, the weekly sports talk show on Channel 18, which is public access TV. My name's Dirk Keller. Got my old friend Pat White here.
Good to see you, Dirk.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming back. On the other far side here, we've got Bud Supple, and as always, Earl Murphy, because it's his show. The longest running public access TV show in Iowa City. We've got a very special guest here today, Pat Hardy. Formerly of the Iowa City Press-Citizen, for 23 years, Pat wrote and covered Hawkeye sports and high school sports for the Press-Citizen and for the Hawkeye fans, the high school fans. And as of last Friday, that came to an end. And I wanted to have Pat here today to talk about that, talk about how it all transpired, and then tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll talk some Hawks, and we'll talk high school football. Pat, welcome to Sports Opinion.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Yeah. So, last Friday, what a day, 23 years.
23 years in, 4 months? I started here in June of I actually started the same week Bob Bowlesby was hired. June of
Really?
91, yep. So he was hired, I think, 2 days before me. So, yeah, I got a phone call saying to come in at 10 o'clock, and by 10:10 I was done. And then
We want to make clear, Pat wasn't fired.
I was not fired. No, and they're paying me through the end of the month. Basically, my position was eliminated. It's just gone. It's just not at the Press-Citizen anymore. Before you had myself and Ryan Merkin as a sports editor, and myself as kind of a general, I did everything, columns, and now it's basically Ryan Merkin and one other person. They eliminated my position. So yeah, it's gone. So
Who's the other person?
his name's Matt Cozy. He'll do more. I don't think he's completely full-time. He'll answer phones and try to help Ryan with high school stuff and wherever they can fill the holes for what Des Moines needs. But all the Hawkeye coverage now is going to be out of Des Moines with their staff. They have 2 people that they've hired to do that. So, but yeah, and when I was done, I just thought about it and went out to KCJJ, and we're discussing things with them, and we're working on some stuff because they value having Hawkeye coverage here in this town. And like I wrote in my introductory blog, I think this town deserves someone here covering the Hawkeyes.
Well, yeah, let's backpedal for just a second. As of last Friday, Iowa City no longer has any print reporter covering the Hawkeyes in any fashion whatsoever.
Well, I mean, Des Moines got their reporters in Des Moines covering for, yeah.
Right, but
Daily
nobody
Iowa.
here in Iowa City.
Daily Iowa has a couple.
Daily Iowa.
You know
I
what?
mean, they turn over, but
Real good point. Daily
They do
Iowa
a
still
decent
does.
job.
Yeah, I mean, and now there's gonna be more need for that, but yeah, no, Daily Iowa, and the Gazette has a reporter who lives down here, but they're still up in Cedar Rapids, but yeah, it's kinda weird, I never thought I'd see this day where
How long's the other guy been there at the Press-Citizen?
Ryan Merkin's been
Yeah.
there, it'll be a year this month, I think he's a
That's
good
what I
guy.
thought. He
Good-
is.
good
Yeah,
guy.
he may be a good guy, but he really doesn't.
Well, he's only
We
been
had
here a
3
year.
players misspelled last Saturday.
He's only been here a year, and he's a friend of mine, so I'm a little biased. He's only
Yeah,
been,
no,
he's only
not-
been here a year, and he's took over as our sports editor in a really tough situation. I mean, he took over a
Right.
paper that was going through a lot of internal
Well, he
stuff.
had to take over the biggest football game.
Yeah, I would have
Eastern
been,
Iowa
I would have
last
normally been
Friday
covering
night.
that game, but he normally does a good job, and I feel for him. He's got to work hard, and he's got a challenge ahead of him, but he'll do his best. He'll do whatever they ask.
On average, how many hours a week did you put into working for the Press-Citizen?
Well, 40. I mean, most time. There was a couple years ago when Ryan Suckermill left and Susan retired, I was working a lot, but they were paying me. I mean, they paid me overtime, but normally you do a 40-hour work week and you sign that in and verify it. And of that, I would say probably it was, well, up until a year and a half ago, 90% of what I did was Hawkeyes. A year and a half
Yeah.
ago, we eliminated a position and things started changing. We started outsourcing more to Des Moines, and my job was never really the same after that.
No, it wasn't.
It was never, I mean, I was doing way more high school stuff, and we were relying more on them, but that's just a lot of the decisions they make here, I think, are being pressured from above and what have you. But yeah, about a year and a half ago, things really started changing to where I didn't have near as much say with the Hawkeye stuff.
Well, now at least you don't have to worry about print deadlines anymore.
No.
And let's face it, the print world is a dinosaur. It's on its way out. There's nobody under 50 who subscribes to a newspaper. I can't even get my kids to look at a story that pertains to them.
Which is sad in a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
I grew up, I'm not really bitter. The Press-Citizen did what they did, you move on, but newspaper, you're right, they're going away. I mean, they're just,
I carried the Press-Citizen.
I mean, if you look now,
How about you?
I was a paper boy growing up.
Well, if you look now on coverage of Iowa sports, there's more internet people covering the Hawks than there are newspapers.
Right.
And when you go on the road, Rob Howe's internet site has gone to every game. Newspapers don't go to every game, other than a couple. Hawkeye Report has gone to every game on the road.
Every game.
Every game. Other newspapers, we quit traveling too. Things are changing.
They don't have the budget.
That's why I'm excited about some of the opportunities
Yeah.
that are here in this
Right.
corridor.
Yeah.
So some of those opportunities that you've already begun, first and foremost, KCJJ, 1630 AM has hired Pat to write a
Hawkeye-
twice weekly blog.
Well, I'm gonna do Mondays and Fridays, I'll cover the games, hopefully, and I'll do at least 3, and sometimes once I get rolling, I'll do a lot more, whenever the news dictates it, but I'll be covering Kirk's Tuesdays press conferences, I'll be advancing games, and I did a lot of stuff at the Press Citizen, Mr. Optimist, Mr. Pessimist, that's coming, they're following me over to the KCJJ, that may upset some people. I think
It does.
some people actually think those guys are real,
Yeah.
and, there's,
Your columns have been longer.
Well, lots of times I can write longer now, but sometimes that's not good either, because you don't want to write too long. You don't want to make people demand their attention too long, but it'll be a lot more lax, because there won't be as much, lots of these games, I'd have to have a story done by 5:30. Now, my goal is with KCJ, a Saturday football game, get it to them at a reasonable time so they can post it up there. And I was stunned, they put my first column up at 8:30, and they came in and told me at 9 o'clock it had 1,900 views.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of traffic on their board.
They
and
do.
That was encouraging to hear that.
Well, the
do.
nice thing is, the big sponsor you picked up already.
That helps, that does
That
help.
helps.
And
That's just going.
And we want to mention
Bless
him,
you.
Patrick Eads with Deary Ford here in Iowa City.
Didn't even have to call him, he came down right after he heard it.
Isn't that something?
That really, and that makes you want to work hard, that makes you want to, this guy's spending money, you got to make it worthwhile, because you want people to come and look, that's how it happens. I'm learning more about advertising every day.
Well,
I never paid any attention to that
get
stuff.
used to it.
Oh, I know. And I will say the Press Citizen's paying me till the end of the month, and I've got not a severance, it's a transitional pay package. That's for, you get 3 weeks, and then 1 week for every year you've been there, plus whatever vacation. I added mine up to over 30, so, I mean, it's not like they're just throwing me out. And it's good until I find a full-time job. So it could be a lot worse. it's just weird not
If you're
covering the
covering
Hawks.
an Iowa game, when do you have to have the story?
Well, lots of times recently, when I started working for the Register more, they'd want a sidebar done by 5:30 from an 11 o'clock game. Games usually end at 2:30, you get done reporting, and come up to start writing about, usually give you about a half an hour to write a sidebar, then they'd want everything else by 6:37. When I first moved up here, the Press Citizen was a PM paper. I mean,
What's that mean?
well, we came out in the afternoon, and we didn't come out
Oh,
on Sunday.
PM, you said.
Yeah, we had no deadlines. I mean, our editors would come in at 2 in the morning to start laying out I mean, I remember I would go to Iowa games on Saturdays. We have no Sunday paper.
Right.
I'd come home, I'd get in there in the office about noon on Sunday. I'd work from noon to 6 writing all this copy. Then the editors would come in at 6 o'clock. That's how different things are now. We used to be a PM paper who didn't print on Sunday when I moved up here. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
Golly.
We always went for more of the feature angle, more advancing what was happening. Because by Monday, the Iowa game was kind of old news. I'd always
Yep.
write features
It
more
was.
advancing what was going on. But I got used to doing that, and then everything changed in '99 when we became PM, got a set.
That's how long it's been.
We merged with the
15
Register.
years.
Yeah, we merged with the Register, and they created the Sunday package.
And by the way, I don't know whether Pat agrees with this or not, this has been a trend of the Press Citizen for over 20 years, to move away from local reporting. and
You'd know that more than I have, because you've been here, you've read
rely
it.
more on Gannett.
And you've probably read the newspaper more than I have. I'm not, but it's hard. It's not a locally owned business. And-
You know, even the Sunday Register now, this is you.
Which I grew up-
You grew up with the
Sunday
Register.
Peach.
But it's now about a third USA Today instead of Register production.
I grew up with the Sunday Peach. I always just went to grab that peach section out of there.
Yes.
And I
Easy
loved
to
it.
pull out, you can
Yeah,
find it
I
right
did-
away.
did
I
too
loved
as a
it.
kid. I used to love the aerial photographs
the
of the
print.
football plays.
But those days will never be again, newspaper-wise. I just don't see any way they're ever gonna, I think now the internet's going to continue to be an avenue that we're gonna see more and more.
It is.
And
Did
you
you
don't
see-
wanna go out and get your paper on Monday morning or Tuesday if it's windy, because it won't be there. It's so thin, it blows away. But
At this point, in terms of Iowa, let's take football coverage, but I assume it'll be the same for basketball. Do you see yourself as a analyst rather than a factual?
I wanna be more of an
Will you
analyst
not-
columnist.
Not be doing a game
I'll-
story.
I'll be doing sort of a game story column. I'm gonna have my opinion in there, it's my blog. So there's always gonna be some opinion in there, but there's maybe a time where I just write a feature story too. Just a feature where, because I don't have an opinion on everything, regardless of what some people think. There's times where maybe just a feature story, but they've pretty much given me the freedom to do what I want. And we were real big at doing picks at the Press Citizen. And I have fun with those. I try to have fun with the comments, as long as I don't get them too personal. Although I felt bad, I did upset Jacob Gannon, because he put out that he had left the Iowa team.
Right.
And I just made a remark that 4 other defenders leave at halftime because they're burned out. Little do I know, he was having anxiety problems, and I apologized to him, and
Oh,
they
my
understood.
God.
But for the most part, and we're gonna start doing picks with KCJJ now.
Yeah.
We're gonna start myself, so we're gonna have, Rob Howe's gonna be part of it. We're gonna get a celebrity picker every week. We're gonna start having those picks on
That
KCJJ.
used to be great when Gene Clausen was alive.
Yeah, we're gonna start
At
doing
noon,
those.
He'd always have the pick, he'd have 2 or 3 games.
People like that stuff. That stuff
Oh, I
gets
know.
more read sometimes than stories do.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
As long as it's localized, you know.
But that's true.
It really does. I mean, the picks are, we had a lady call in last Saturday when I was doing the show, my first sports buddies after they laid me off. She's like, is Pat Hardy there? And we're like, well, yeah, he's right here. She's like, well, Pat, where are your picks? They were up at the Midtown restaurant. I'm like, and then.
She didn't know you.
She didn't know, and then they told her, and she had a reaction.
She was not
Not
happy. No. We should point out that Pat, among other things, has been appearing on KCJJ every Saturday morning at
For-
8 a.m.
For 7 years.
7
Doing
years
high
now.
school sports, and that was at first, that was an issue, whether they were gonna let me do that, but Gannett let me do that. They've kind of softened, used to be you couldn't do stuff like
Right.
that, but they let me do that, and I started 2008, Sean Green's,
Sports Buddies.
every Saturday, 8 o'clock.
My son has 2 boys that go to Kirk-Manor, and he said they don't get
The coverage.
coverage. He said that they're having a good season.
They're having a great
Both
season.
KXAC and WMT have quit broadcasting.
That's part of the other
No
reason.
high school sports
I'm
coverage
just
on
shocked.
WMT
That's right.
or
They broadcast high
KXAC.
school sports for 40 years.
Well, I mean, I'm shocked by it, but I think there's not the financial support for that, but that's what people have to drum up again.
I disagree strongly with that statement. There is financial
Then they're not
support
going to
for
the
high
right
school
way of getting
sports.
it.
They
There's cheaper
don't-
programming.
Yes, there's cheaper programming. Clear Channel, now iHeartRadio, they've changed their name once again, owns KXAC, they own WMT and WHO, and WOC for that matter in Davenport. Those are all legacy stations, legacy frequencies, and have been known for decades for covering high school sports, boys and girls. And they have pulled out across the board in every one of their stations. I guess they pulled out of WHO a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now, no Clear Channel radio station anywhere in the country covers high school sports because they didn't want to commit the resources.
Because it's
and
not a
the
big
time.
moneymaker. It's not a huge
No.
moneymaker covering it. It's more of an
No.
obligation.
There's enough there.
Steve does it at KCJJ because it's part of his community service.
That's right.
I mean, it's his way
More
of serving the
power to him.
community.
Yep.
He doesn't get,
It's a great service.
and he pays me for every game that I do for them, pays me well, and it's a service he's providing for the community because nobody else will, and he sees that market out there now.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
People want high school sports, they want Hawkeye sports here in this town, and we're gonna figure out a way to keep giving it to them.
We just have one station around the area that does.
KGYM and Cedar Rapids covers.
Yeah,
high
they're
school
doing their
sports.
part.
Well, and they put more than one game on.
Right.
Most Friday nights.
They've
And
got an FM
they
substation.
Do a pretty good job.
They do a very good job. And KCJJ does a very good job. Pat's part of that. He covers high school sports every
Ryan
Friday
Murphy, the
night.
new guy's good.
Yeah,
He
Ryan
does a
Murphy
really
works
good
with
job.
you.
Hard worker.
Now, you were in attendance Friday night at the Regina Cedar Rapids Xavier
I
game.
was there.
And it's not ex-Xavier.
Is that what I was saying? Is Xavier?
Xavier.
Xavier, okay.
Or Xavier.
Xavier.
If you want to get
okay.
French about it.
All right.
We also give lessons.
I figure though, if your alma mater beats them by 22, don't you have the right to mispronounce their name by?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Now, one of the things that frustrated me Friday night, I was tired, I was beat down by another work week, and I was so looking forward to watching that Xavier Regina game on Channel 9 substation. And they didn't carry it.
They carried a different one. Oh, no,
They carried Anamosa and I think Western Dubuque.
No, Union.
Union, oh yeah, that's it.
Upward City.
Yeah,
I'll tell
and
you that. I'll
I
explain
talked to the
that.
coaches that night at the Hilltop. and they told me that KCRG pulled out the day before the game.
Well, it wasn't all their fault. Xavier,
Something about wet grounds.
no, Xavier and Regis will not let them televise any of their games at home because it cuts down a guy like you.
Yeah.
Stayed home to watch
I
it.
wasn't gonna go to the game either,
You
either way.
probably would have though if you knew.
No, I wouldn't have.
But people do.
I wouldn't have.
People
But people
do.
do, that's
Yeah.
right, but I wasn't going to go. And
But they have not had a
why
game
wouldn't
televised.
KCRG know that weeks, if not months in advance? They've been promoting that game.
I think
I
what
don't
they
think
did,
advertising it is televised.
they advertised it, and then I think the school board athletic there didn't get permission the right time, but they said, no, we've had that policy, we're gonna stay that policy.
Maybe they knew Ryan and I were gonna be there,
And
they
that,
just couldn't. go.
well, as long as you were there, the first thing I noticed you said that is how big the crowd was.
There was a nice crowd, because this is no knock on the Iowa City schools, but they don't travel that well. I mean, I've been amazed at the years.
They don't anymore. I went to the City High Cedar Rapids, Washington game Thursday night up at.
There was 102
I
people.
watched that on
It
TV.
was shocking.
102, I counted. There was 102 people.
on the
I didn't want to
east
say it on the,
side?
there was 102,
Total.
yeah, at one point. And one point I counted 78. I mean, it is shocking. But there were times where they did.
Washington's number, what, 4, number 1?
Number two on one and number one on the other, and City played well. I mean,
Yeah, they did.
Cities,
One of the things that Chip Hardesty, who works out at City High, sat with us, and we were talking about that very fact, and I just asked him, do you have an opinion as to why the students don't go anymore? It looked to me like there were about 15 students
yeah.
there. And he says, well, frankly, I'm not sure, they just aren't as interested as you and I were when we were
Well,
in
but
school.
then you
It was the
realize that they
biggest
got
thing.
volleyball going on, they got cross-country.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not going to cross-country.
They had a cross-country
Yeah.
meet up in Tipton
But-
for the Friday night.
But fans aren't going to that.
No, but every grandparent that
Parents
goes
do.
to, right, parents do.
Yeah, well, this game was Thursday night, and,
His was.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
well, Thursday night's even a
But
busier
I mean,
night,
Washington didn't have
Yeah,
a huge
Thursday
crowd
usually
either, and it was
busy.
their senior.
because Fridays are cleared
Isn't
for
that
football.
something?
See, the track meet was scheduled for Thursday, and if you remember, it rained
Got
hard,
moved.
and they moved it to Friday night.
Yeah.
But
And
Des
it was a
Moines-
conference because the state starts this week.
I know when Valley and Dowling play their games out, there's thousands of people there.
Yeah,
It's different here right now, and I'm not sure why.
Does West High draw?
A little bit, not bad, but
you
nothing.
know, their last game that Press Citizen and maybe somebody else ran the picture of the fireworks.
Good picture.
Showing the West High stands.
Empty?
It was half empty.
It's definitely,
empty.
I mean, when, in my day, not to go back to my day, but we used to have to play some of our basketball games at Veterans Auditorium, because like if we played a good team, Dowling versus Lincoln, or the gyms wouldn't hold them. Now, they're lucky to get those gyms we played a lot of our games at Vets, just for more room.
But Dowling used to play at Drake too, for their
I
very
mean,
reason.
things were different, but the high school games were the big thing, because there wasn't the internet.
I'll go back to
Yeah.
Regina. I take tickets out there, and their crowds have really been down this year.
They have, but it was good on Friday.
Yeah, Friday
No,
was,
their
but
crowds
there's a
have-
real big game.
But in fairness though, Bud, some of those games are, do I want to go watch Drew Cook play for a quarter?
That's
That's
exactly
Well,
right.
that's what I did.
No,
I
I-
went to watch the Highland game, and specifically,
Well, at least
I
we
wanted to
got,
see Drew
at
Cook.
least we got your $6.
He
I
was
really
done,
haven't
but in
come.
the second quarter.
A lot of coaches,
Yeah.
a lot of coaches would leave their kid in longer. Marv's really good that way.
Yeah,
Drew,
he is.
Drew may not make All-State for that reason, but last year, the same thing was going on. Then he caught fire in the playoffs and made All-State. I think the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, well, and then I think after Friday night, that was so big.
That was huge.
I
and
would-
How
I
many
didn't think
thousands
they'd
of people
ever-
were at that game?
Six?
I would bet there's 5,000, 6,000.
Really?
And what surprised me the most of all was how Regina won it. They wore Xavier
That's
down.
right, I can't
They wore him down in the trenches in the third quarter, and fourth quarter. They
I
just
think
beat 'em.
Adams made most of the tackles.
Oh, Michael Adam was everywhere, and then Jake
My
Brinkman.
God.
Once they gave Jake Brinkman a hole, Regina, the 1A team, was more physical, and that's where they won the game.
That's really something.
And they had a better quarterback, but
At
Drew
least
needs to
two
complete
of
a
the
lot of
kids
passes.
I've heard said, we've been practicing on this for
they
4
have
weeks."
been.
So they know they have those week games coming up, so they practice.
They had a 3-week stretch where, and Marv would never say this, but the
No.
games were foregone conclusions, which
Right.
is unfortunate. That's a state of how good Regina is, but it's also, there's a lot of really bad high school football teams.
But they're better than most of the 2A teams they played
Oh,
when they
they-
were a
yeah.
2A school.
Well, they're better than a lot of the 3A. They just beat
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
No,
right.
Regina's a freak. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna be able to maintain this forever, this
No,
run, but
nothing lasts.
sooner or later, you're gonna get caught up with a class that's not that good or whatever, but no, this team, I think losing to Solon maybe helped them in a way.
Oh, I
Not
do
that they
too.
really needed it, but
I
I
do
think it
too,
made them
yes.
hungry.
When you think about
I
it,
agree with
Xavier
you.
beat Solon, what, 21-0, 28-0?
28-0.
28-0
At Xavier.
at Xavier. And that was just 2 weeks after Solon had beaten Regina
Right.
at Solon.
Mm-hmm.
And so flash forward, what, 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, Regina at Xavier, and really Regina dominated the game.
They did.
But then you have to go, Solon goes up to Western Dubuque and just smothers them.
Yeah.
Western Dubuque's the team that beat Xavier.
At Xavier.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, comparative scores are pretty hard to rely
Well,
on.
when they're that high,
Yeah, because I look at it this way, Indiana beat Missouri, and Missouri just destroyed Florida there. I mean, it's just, you can play
Well,
this
I heard a comparative score that had Iowa as the best team.
team in the nation.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
in the nation.
You could
Yeah,
work it that
yeah.
way. You could work it that way.
Well, any thoughts on what you saw of Regina last Friday night?
That I was just impressed with the fact that they had maybe 1/3 the amount of players that Xavier did. Xavier had 70 players suited up, and Regina was the tougher, more physical team at the end. And I continue to be impressed with just Drew Cook's athleticism. I mean, I keep reminding myself, when he ran for that 50-yard run, he's 6'5", it looked like a bunch of little kids chasing after their uncle or something. He's 6'5", 220, running like that, and that's why people speculate, oh, he's gonna end up at tight end. I think they're gonna give him every chance to try at quarterback. But Drew's got the luxury, unlike the other quarterbacks they're recruiting, he could play another position. I mean, James Vandenberg, can you imagine Jake Rudock playing another position?
No.
No, Drew has that luxury if it doesn't work out.
Couldn't Boyle play defensive back?
Possibly, but I don't think he ever has. I don't know if he's even
Oh, he
attempted.
didn't play?
No, he does not play defense. He's a quarterback. This is just me predicting. I think he would go to a different school before switching positions, but I could be wrong. That's just my gut feeling. He wants to play quarterback.
I saw somebody's note that Benevetti got pulled in his.
He got benched in the second quarter. He's had some, and unlike, Drew and Benevetti are similar in height, but Drew's a 4'6", 40 guy. He can run a high 4'6", 40. Benevetti's, from what I've seen, is more of a statue back there. Drew would give, it's gonna have to come down to, will Iowa be willing to work with Drew through some of the early throwing issues to take advantage of his athleticism? Because to me, Iowa needs to become more athletic at the quarterback position.
Oh, boy.
Because stuff's changing around them now to where, Chuck Long's even told me this, the days of just having that drop back quarterback like Chuck Long where you need everything going around you to be well. I mean, Chuck Long wouldn't have been very good without a good blocking crew. And
Right.
I think the quarterback position, just the year they had with Brad Banks, what that
Isn't
shows you.
Chuck Long easy to talk with?
Oh, he's great to talk with. And Chuck will, he doesn't need to bow to anybody. He'll say his feelings. He doesn't have an agenda and what have you. But the quarterback position's changing. That's why I give Drew a chance. If they see, wow, we got a because Drew in a year is gonna be 6'5", 235, 240. Marv said he's faster than he was at that stage.
Oh, yeah.
But why people are intrigued is in the state championship game last year, remember they lined him up at receiver? And and he jumps up and makes this beautiful catch for a touchdown in the end
They've
zone.
done that several times this
And
year,
it works
yeah.
every time.
Didn't they use him as a receiver in a play or two
Yes.
Friday?
Yes.
And then they put Nathan Stinger, who's gonna be a good quarterback next
yeah,
year. He's
gonna be-
6'3".
I like him.
He's a good athlete too. He's kinda like a poor man's Drew
Yeah.
Cook in a way. But I mean, a lot of people are just assuming he'll move to tight end. It's gonna take patience from Iowa, and because they need a quarterback when the play breaks down can do something.
Yep.
You saw that last Saturday. Jake was just, the protection was not good, but you've got bad protection and a quarterback that's immobile, you have what happened at Maryland.
Yeah, and it was a disaster. I guess this is as good a time as any to switch over to Hawkeye sports and talk about that. None of us were at the game. I think that's a first
I wasn't there
for
either.
this season. None of us were at the game.
Now, it's hard to, I really, as much as I enjoy watching them on TV, I miss being able to see the substitutions and
Yeah.
the bench and just a different game on television than it is in person.
Well,
A
that
lot of it
wasn't a
depends on
very
who your
fun.
announcers are too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of it does.
Joey Galloway did not score a lot of points with Iowa.
No.
No, he rarely does.
But he did,
He did call Brandon Scherf out.
yeah.
Said he's losing money by the play, I think is what he
He had a
said.
terrible game.
I don't know what happened. I mean, well.
Do you think he's hurt
Well,
still?
if he's hurt, then don't play him. If you're
No,
gonna
that's-
jeopardize him and have him be as
I'm with
bad
you.
as he was, his run blocking is still okay. He looked like he was wearing roller skates.
That linebacker just beat him time
Time and time again, and
after
Schiff
time.
looked confused.
And he actually got knocked to the seat of his pants twice. that
I
could
was
see.
stunned. I don't know what's going on with the offensive line. To me, we've talked about the quarterbacks ad nauseum. The story is the offensive line.
And that's Brian Ferentz.
That is Brian Ferentz, and I just think Greg Davis is trying to make Iowa into something it's not right now because they can't run the ball. They have to keep trying to run the football. That's Iowa football. They don't have the personnel to line 5 guys. Those receivers could, Rob Howe was at that game. Those receivers could not get open against Maryland
Why?
Well, and
because they're not as fast as the guys chasing
he
after them.
didn't have time.
Didn't have time and didn't have open
We
receivers.
just don't have speed.
No, but that's why you gotta stick with this power running game. The only way Rudock is gonna be
Yeah.
successful is with play action.
It was explained to me that Maryland's defensive line were smaller and quicker than the Hawkeye offensive line.
They were.
And to get past the bigger, stronger offensive linemen, Maryland had to use certain stunts that put them out of position often to stop the run game. And yet, at one point in the game, the Hawkeyes threw 37 straight pass plays.
I think a lot of that too, they were playing catch up. And I just think Greg Davis has gotten so frustrated with the lack of a running game. I think he just gave up on it, assuming it wasn't gonna turn around. Everyone's pointing to Weissman's yards per carry. It was impressive, but you
Yeah.
take that one carry out, he was back to 9 carries for like 2.9 yards.
Yeah.
It just wasn't that impressive, just that one carry. It's kind of misleading, but I still think they abandoned it. Iowa football is based on play action, and you can't have play action if they don't think you're gonna run. And they don't have the type of personnel to do what they're
you
doing.
can't. Your
Now-
passing game is, you're thrown into a very strong wind if you have no running attack at all.
I mean, Stephon Diggs, if Iowa had Stephon Diggs, but they don't. He's a 5-star who everybody in the country wanted, and you
Right.
saw why on Saturday.
Right.
But everyone says Kirk's not willing to change. Kirk has obviously let Greg Davis, this isn't Kirk's offense.
There've been all kinds of changes in the last 2 years.
So this perception that Kirk is stubborn and nothing changed, things are changing.
Going
They're just-
on 4th down, how many times
No,
this year?
Well, I think he's turned into a riverboat gambler.
In a lot of ways he
Fourth
has.
down,
And he's
but-
had a lot of success with it, too.
He's had great
You
success.
could tell
with
Kirk
it.
was frustrated with the offensive
Until
line.
Saturday.
Kirk's never gonna call anyone out individually, especially his son, but you could tell from his postgame, he
Well,
brought
he
up 2 or
works
3
with our
times.
offensive
Yeah,
line.
he does. He brought up 2 or 3 times, though, well, Jake was running for his life the whole game.
He was.
That's Kirk's way of saying we didn't get it done up front, and they didn't.
Well, it was just a calamity of errors the whole game, and I thought one thing,
We didn't even get it done on defense.
no.
No, and I think the
Missed
defense,
tackles.
the defense might be a product of the schedule.
Well, some of the defensive problem, I think, is, again, lack of speed.
Speed, definitely.
Reggie Spearman, who we all fell in love with last year.
'Cause he was
just plain
16.
slow.
He is, and Johnny Loudermilk, as great as he is,
He can't cover.
when he gets one-on-one with Stephon Diggs in space,
It's all
there's no
over.
chance.
There's no-
And you notice Desmond King looked slow Saturday trying to guard Stephon Diggs. But in fairness, Stephon Diggs is arguably, might be the first player taken receiver-wise in the
Yeah.
draft this year. But if Iowa wants to be as good as a lot of people envision, you gotta win games like that. But the season still, it's only 5-2. It's never as bad as it seems under Ferentz, other than in 2012
You
and
mentioned-
2006.
King,
Those were bad years.
King,
Yeah.
Who?
King.
Yeah, Desmond King. He had a tough game.
I think he's pretty good.
Oh, I think he's real good. He
He's
just,
very good, Murph, but he's slow.
he didn't have, that's why he didn't have. If you've covered recruiting for as long as I do, a lot of these guys, they're missing usually one thing that, like Desmond King had Iowa and MAC offers. The reason, he's a great football player. I think he's got a
Yeah,
chance,
I think he's
but he
terrific.
doesn't have that top
He's a
speed.
terrific ball player, but he's not quick. He can't keep up with a fast receiver.
And you
running
saw
right
what
at
happened
him.
Saturday, because Stephon Diggs is,
Do you think it hurt going ahead 14-0?
shouldn't have.
maybe it shouldn't have. To
Shouldn't
me,
have, but I
they
think
had,
it did.
they were up 14-0 and they
They
had,
weren't playing
So
properly.
did the Hawkeyes get complacent?
Oh, couldn't possibly.
I don't know why you
Oh,
would the
boy.
way it happened. It's not like
The
they.
reason I asked that is because I saw some of the quotes of some of the players, and they, just might as well have said, we were complacent.
Well, it obviously didn't help, but to me, they were up 14-0 and they went up against.
looked good.
They went up against the number 3 quarterback for half the game.
Yeah.
C.J. Brown missed half that game, plus they got back in the game because they could not stop C.J. Brown from running in the late
Right.
first quarters. That's what got Maryland. They had no answer for him. That's what got him back in the game.
Maryland's ball faking on offense was really good.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was.
that's a good
They had
point.
2 weeks to prepare, and they were faster, and they were playing at home, and
Well, the thing that probably frustrated me the most, and I think underscores part of the problem, that I think Greg Davis has brought. I don't understand it, I'm not close enough to understand it, but in the last 30 seconds, we're a touchdown behind, you've still got a chance. Jake Rudock, who's, everybody acknowledges is a very bright young man,
Yes.
is standing there looking over at the sideline, waiting for a play
I
signal.
don't know why you don't have two
10
plays already
seconds,
called.
click
Clock
off.
is grinding away.
That was,
What in the world is
that was
going on?
confusing.
And then he throws a 4-yard slant pass.
Yeah, I've seen enough horizontal passes the
That-
last 3 years to
That
last me
did
a
it
lifetime.
with me and Greg Davis.
That
As far as
didn't-
I'm concerned, he won't be gone too soon. It's just not working.
It's not, I think it's fair to
We're
say.
halfway through the third year, and it hasn't worked.
No, and I think he's trying to make the offense into something that they don't have the pieces to be.
Well, that may
They've got to
be,
be an
but-
old school
but-
off.
Coaching starts with recruiting. That's the first thing you've got to do.
And that's the column I wrote about
And
a
again,
month.
I mean, he's been here 3 years. We still don't have
Well,
speed.
what's the ultimate thing that caught up with Hayden? Recruiting.
Well, coaches, too.
Well, when they lost his staff, he didn't get as good of players.
Right.
The thing that always is gonna be the biggest challenge for Iowa is recruiting. It's not easy.
No, that's right.
It's just not
It's
easy, and recruiting is what eventually will catch up with Kirk. I mean, Kirk's been here 16 years. Hayden's second 10 wasn't as good as his first 10.
no.
Kirk's second 10's not. It's the same, and I think it's a lot of different things working against coaches. And a lot of it's who you get as your staff. When Kirk had Barry Alvarez, they went in and got Larry Station. Barry Alvarez was a huge, Bernie Wyatt, they had personalities that.
Earls won some of those
Well,
recruiting trips.
Ron Dane would have been at Wisconsin if Bernie Wyatt had not. That all would have been at Wisconsin. All that stuff that happened there would have been at Iowa if Barry Alvarez and Bernie Wyatt were hired to be the. That
That's right.
shows you what recruiting is. All that stuff would, Ron Dane would have gone to Iowa if Barry Alvarez and Bernie Wyatt were the coaches here. He would have gone to Iowa.
Yeah.
He
Think of
probably,
that.
he may not know that, but I do.
I think it's gonna get worse with the East
Well,
having the bigger and better teams.
Iowa needs a 10-2 season. They need something to happen to say, hey, we're not just ordinary and stale right now, and that's what you're hoping you can get out of the season, at least 9 victories. I picked them to go 9-3, I have them 5-2 at this stage. My 9-3, though, I'm more thinking 8-4, 7-5 now.
That's what
How
it's
do you
feeling
think we'll
like.
do it against Northwestern?
I don't know. I'm gonna probably pick Iowa to win, because it's
If
at,
we play like we did Saturday, we'll
We'll
lose.
they'll lose.
If
But
we
if
play
we
like we
play-
did against Indiana,
Indiana
we'll
will
win.
The one thing Northwestern doesn't have now is Kane Coulter, that quarterback who kills you on 3rd and 8 when he gains 9. They do not have that. And Iowa has been victimized by that for the 20 years I've been watching them.
Third
Remember
and long.
Antoine Randall L?
And they
Very
don't
well.
have Henrik Mark either.
Yeah, 3rd and 11, he'd get 13. I mean, what do you do? And he'd do it all on his own because he's faster than the guy chasing him.
Yeah.
I went out east with Hayden one year when we got Granger and Hunter.
Keith Hunter.
And Hunter just sort of tagged along. But the guy they were after was Granger. And Tippett, they got him, and that was 3 guys out of Behringer High School.
Yep. And then you
And I
had,
said, who's after you? And he said, well, Granger's talking. He said, sort of Penn State. And I thought, we're wasting our time. But I guess Hayden makes a lot of difference.
and Iowa was new and fresh. It was a
That's
new,
right.
unique challenge, and they
That's
had the
right.
right personalities in there
Yes.
selling. Kirk's in his 16th year of basically selling the same thing. That's hard. It's hard to do.
Who are his chief recruiters?
Well, all of them for the most part, but I think he's got his son in Chicago and Ohio. I think he's relying on his son a lot. He's got Chris White out on the East Coast with Jim Reed, and they're trying to make a dent in Maryland, and they've tried to make a surge in Georgia. The problem is the best players down there aren't going to come to Iowa. They're just
Not
not.
anymore.
They're just not. They're not going to leave the South, and if they do, it's going to be to go to like a Notre Dame. But that's never really changing. That's just how recruiting is. That's
And
just the nature of it.
Let me ask you this. We don't have very many black coaches. And I think that makes a difference in recruiting. 'cause
I mean,
we're recruiting mostly black players.
They've got, let's see, Bobby Kennedy, and who else?
Well, Kelvin Bell is.
Kelvin Bell's on
recruiting-
campus, and
Recruiting guy.
he does that, and I can't think, is it just Bobby? I thought
I
that,
think that's it.
I mean, there was times like when Hayden would have, he always had Carl Jackson for the most part. No, there is some truth to be said with that. I mean, if you're a black kid, you're gonna probably be sometimes more comfortable talking to somebody of your skin color. I
Yeah.
think that does matter, and if you see, what did Alford do the moment he left Iowa? He aligned himself with assistant coaches who could recruit. Why
Exactly.
he didn't do that when he was here, why he had his staff when he was here, I mean,
They might not have wanted to come here.
yeah, that's true.
But
No,
UCLA
but you're right, though, that
or
is
New
definitely,
Mexico, different
that
story.
is definitely an issue, but I don't know if it's an issue with Iowa. I mean, I'm not saying that, I've never really thought about that, but, you're thinking about that as a
Well, how
fan.
many do we have on the team?
I'm trying to think right now, Bobby Kennedy, and I thought there was,
No, I meant on the team actually.
oh, I'd say it's probably 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 white, but that's always changed. And I don't really think that's really Iowa's problem right now,
I don't either.
I just think right now, they just have, they're just in a, I don't wanna call it a rut, but they have a situation where they don't have the personnel to do what they're trying to do.
You know, talking about recruiting, there's news today that will get Iowa fans salivating.
And I know what you're gonna say.
That Hilliard's brother is coming back a second time.
November
The
3rd.
Kid that's committed to Ohio State and is ranked is one of the top 10 linebackers in the country, and his brother is a true freshman redshirting from Cincinnati.
Jerome Baker, another stud linebacker from Ohio, just decommitted from Florida. New York Times wrote a story a
Saw
couple of
that.
weeks ago. They wrote a really good story about how the Big Ten was just losing out. The reason it's not good anymore because guys like Jerome Baker are leaving Ohio to go to Florida. He has since decommitted from Florida and he's going to Ohio State. He announced it today, and within 5 minutes, the father of Justin Hilliard had reached out to Rivals.com to say we're visiting Iowa. So I think there's some resentment going on.
Which illustrates what recruiting has
It's-
become.
It's fluid.
It is,
A young man's father
Yes.
is
Yeah.
telling one
Yeah.
of these recruiting networks,
Yeah, it's definitely
going on?
different, and if you're Iowa, you gotta do whatever you can to try to get this kid, and you never know, but they need to play, they can't they can't collapse. Because what's gonna happen now, if this kid's available, Notre Dame's gonna come right back in there.
Yeah.
They're gonna be Alabama, his other Final Four will be in there. So Iowa needs to, I think they gotta at least finish 8-4 for this kid to say, yeah, they're moving in the right direction, I'll go there.
boy,
well, unfortunately, one of the keys to successful recruiting is having a visible winning program. And in some ways, every time you lose a game, you lose ground. in
It hurts,
recruiting.
it definitely
Yeah.
hurts.
But I don't think it's the end of the season.
Oh, I don't either, they're 5-2.
We could still win the Big Ten.
Yes,
no.
Everyone picked Maryland to beat us.
I
That's
picked
one-
Maryland to win.
I
yes.
know.
I picked that.
Everybody did.
I picked Maryland to win back before the
Well,
season
we should have
started.
had it, I'm not saying.
Maryland was favored by, I think, 5. by
5 points.
kickoff.
I
And they beat us by
read
7.
where it was 3, but, you know.
It started, I
Well, it
think it
changed.
started at
It
3, but
moved,
inched
yeah.
up.
But no, I was not surprised they lost. I was surprised at the manner in which they
Well,
lost. The
that's
fact that they
right.
couldn't,
Yes.
the fact that they couldn't run or stop the run, and the fact they threw 56 passes with a quarterback who doesn't have a real strong arm. I mean, I just was like, what are you trying to do?
You know, one of the, talking about stopping the run, one of the things that I'm, again, pretty disappointed in is Carl Davis. He has 7 solo tackles, 15 assisted tackles for the whole season.
It's 7 games.
Louis Trinket-Passat has twice as many, and they play the same position, doing the same thing. Now that,
It's hard to argue with those
That's not
stats.
good,
No,
yeah.
that's not good, and I don't think Carl's had an all Big Ten season so far.
no,
I
he
mean,
hasn't.
Has he been hurt?
No, I mean, if he is, he's
Well,
playing. I
You
mean,
never know.
picked up.
They
Yeah,
don't,
that's
they
what
don't
I
tell
meant.
you anymore.
but if he was too hurt, he wouldn't be playing. I mean, but no, he hasn't really, Trinket-Passat's been a very pleasant surprise, but the last 2 weeks, they've,
Did anybody see Doris Jackson and Carl?
No, were they here for the game?
I did see him. I did see Carl in the press box.
I had the best visit with him. I bumped into him right after the game, and I got a kiss from Doris and a handshake from Carl.
Are they back in Texas?
Yeah, they're living in
Yeah.
Texas, Houston.
Yeah, that's
And
what I thought.
they're the finest people,
He was a good man.
yes.
And he was somebody who didn't need attention. He didn't seem like he had an ego that needed to be padded or
Oh, no,
anything. He
he
just was
didn't.
behind the scenes.
Much like Bill Brazier.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still see
See
Bill.
those two.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill, yeah, we see Bill every Friday and Monday. He's at our quarterback club.
I hope Carl has heard what Kirk has had to say.
Kirk loves Carl Jackson.
He does. He passed John Cooper and is tied with Fielding Yost for 9th or 10th all-time among Big Ten coaches. But he was asked about that, and he started talking about some of the great coaches. And he said one of his regrets was that really great coaches and great people like Bill Brazier and Carl
You mentioned
Jackson
another
Yes,
both.
didn't ever get the chance to be a head coach.
That was at his last Tuesday, he said, and that was very impressive. But Kirk's always good that way. He's always good
he
at,
is.
I I mean, he does, if you're a fan, I would think he would make it hard to get upset at him when you're really, because he does do so many things the right way.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, he's a gentleman, but, you know, but he's also a coach that's got a team that fans want to and expect to win, and Saturday was just not a good day, but there's a chance still to have a decent season, a
Pat,
good season.
Are the Hawkeyes too predictable on offense? It
Yes.
seems as if the opponent's defensive team knows what we're going to do lately.
They are, but whenever we say that to Kirk, he brings up a good point. His 0-2 team was really predictable on offense. But they had the horses, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Most of the Iowa, 04,
Bullies of the Big Ten.
the 04 is kind of the exception to all these rules. They couldn't run the ball, but the one thing you gotta remember, I went back and looked, that 04 defense gave up less than 15 points in like most of their, they never had teams scoring against them. So that stuff that Drew Tate and those guys did, they had a great defense backing them up.
But Drew Tate was way more mobile
For
than
the, yeah,
Jake Rudock.
no, not even close, but how did Drew Tate's career end? By 06, people were begging for Jake Christian. Remember how
Yeah,
ugly it
no,
ended?
No,
I mean, that 06 team, to me, that team completely fell apart.
They
And
did.
Drew Tate was at the head of that. He was,
but Drew Tate has had a nearly 10-year pro football
oh yeah, Jake
career,
Rudock won't play.
He-
No, he'll be a doctor. He'll be examining Drew Tate.
which
maybe.
is fine.
Yeah. But Drew was great. Drew was not, I would call a dual threat, but he had eyes in the back of his head. He knew how
Well,
to
he
buy
could
time.
improvise.
He bought time in the pocket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see, I was gonna also add, but I think we're predictable, too predictable. And, you know, like you said, sometimes it doesn't matter. I think it matters now.
I think it matters more now. I will agree with you on that. And the thing that frustrates me is I think like, don't run the stretch play with Mark Weissman around the end. It never works. He's
No,
too
I
slow.
know.
He's too slow. Run him between the tackles, but they're trying to run that delayed stretch play with It works with Kanzeri when he's healthy, but Weissman shouldn't be running anywhere beyond those.
It works with Bullock when he catches it.
Yeah, but Weissman, they insist on still trying to run that delayed stretch play, and it just never works.
What really frosted me was at the very end of the game, last possession. And we've talked about it a little bit already. And Joey Galloway said it on the very last play of the game when Rudock threw not to one, but two Hawkeye receivers in the same spot.
They looked
Who
befuddled.
both dropped it. And he said, I don't know what they're thinking there. 4-yard pass when you're down 7 and you got 80 yards to go. That's not going to get you what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking there.
What they're thinking is because Maryland was playing so deep,
Yeah.
I mean, they were 40 yards off the ball. You got to throw underneath and then
The
try
guy's
to block
supposed to
a
run.
hole.
I guess if I
But somebody
had,
ran the wrong pattern.
they obviously did, and I
But it
just.
was 4th down. There were 5 seconds on the clock. You're not going to get a touchdown.
That's because we wasted 15.
Especially with the
We
person,
sure did.
especially with
I
their
never saw
personnel.
so many drop passes in my
No,
life.
I'm with you.
Oh, there was a game earlier this year where they dropped,
Yeah, we
how
dropped
many?
more.
that
We
ball-
counted
or
them.
so ago.
Was that Ball State, where they had, I think, 7 at
I think
least?
that's right.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, they did have 7.
Oh, they had more than 7.
And I was a little surprised that they didn't put CJ in at all. Just give him a chance.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
That-
Why
that's
would
the-
you start the second half?
I don't
with
normally
CJ
harp-
What did you
Beathard?
say?
CJ Beathard, start the second
I
half.
don't normally harp on those decisions because they're the coaches. They know way more about football. But why not give him a chance?
Kirk has hinted that he was hurt. He hadn't really.
But then he also said he was able to go.
Yeah,
So
but,
I don't know what to.
I mean,
He
that's
can
part
throw
of
that
Kirk's.
pass
You never know.
20 yards further than,
He won't tell you unless somebody breaks a leg.
The difference there is CJ will not hesitate to throw the ball, whether it's in traffic or not. He is going to get that ball downfield, and it might turn out disastrous. You know, he might throw an interception, but at least he tried. And Rudock, for whatever reason, is just throwing so many slants, so many horizontal passes, and I forget who said it.
Well, I'm
Maybe
sure the coaches see that.
Those aren't easy passes either. It's not easy to throw a
No.
25-yard sideways pass to a receiver who's got to hit him on the run with the sideline right there. Those are hard.
The
Yes.
quarterback who can make that pass from the one hash mark to the other sideline can throw the ball downfield. if They design a route.
Those are not easy passes that I know we take for granted because we've seen so much, but those
we didn't
horizontal
throw
routes are
a
hard.
ball to a wide receiver
In the first half, I don't
in the
think.
first half.
Yeah, and then
I
all the,
think twice the whole game.
and then they stopped running in the second half. That's a
who was the
team.
guy that dropped 2 in a row?
Was it
Kurt
Cavan-
Manley dropped
Yeah,
a couple.
Cavante.
Yeah.
Manly.
And for a senior, he's been very disappointing this
Very
year.
dis-
Same thing that Pat's been. not enough speed. His biggest, he's got good
He's got
hands.
good, great
But he's been,
hands.
that's what I'm
He's
talking about,
shifty.
dropping them.
I know, but he'll do a few drops. I do it, but his problem is he's just doesn't have that upper gear.
He's pretty good at the 5 to 10 yard
Yeah.
down and out, because he can cut well.
But he's not gonna
run
blow by
against
a cornerback on a
bat,
fly
But he can't
route.
run deep.
Who's the guy that transferred up here?
Damon Powell.
Damone Powell.
Powell.
Kirk keeps saying he's new. He just arrived.
He's got 5
His career
games
is
left.
almost over, and we're
I
still not
agree.
using him.
Yeah.
You know, the way that Maryland game started out offensively, I was giddy. I just thought, here we go. You know, they opened up the playbook.
Maryland made some adjustments on defense.
Boy, I guess.
They
And we
did.
sure didn't adjust much to their changes.
No?
We got off to a great start with a great play by Drew Ott.
Yes.
Yes, that was a great, and Jacob Hilliard made a great play on special
he
teams.
did.
See, that was one of the best special teams plays I've ever seen.
Remind me, what did he do?
Recovered the onside
Stephon
kick.
Diggs was trying to just put the
Oh,
ball
yeah,
out of
yeah, yeah,
bounds,
yeah.
and he went by and somehow caught it. It was an incredible play.
Yeah.
And he caught a touchdown right before that. He had about a 2-minute stretch where he was probably the player of the game.
The best one was the first onside kick.
That was good, too. Iowa got, yeah, they got an
Obviously,
onside kick to work. I mean, they're trying to do things. They are trying to do things, but I still say it comes down to Greg Davis is trying to make the offense into something that it's not because they don't have the personnel to do it. And he's given up on the running attack, and that's what they're built to do.
Can't give up on it.
You can't.
Who's our
That's-
leadership? That's what I'd like to know. Who's our leadership?
Well, Jake Rudock's awfully quiet, and he's not a senior.
Oh, you mean players on the
Players
field?
wise,
Yeah.
because I don't think there's any issue with who the leader of the team is. I know Kirk will never lose control of that. I don't know. Brandon Scherf's not a real go-getter,
No,
not a real
that's who
vocal
I thought
kid.
would be this year.
And
Mark
Brandon,
Weissman's not a vocal guy?
No?
no, so I don't know. I would assume it's Scherf and Carl Davis. If you just would base it on size and success and what have you, to me, they would be your leaders, but I
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
someone's gonna talk to these other players that aren't producing. That
I think
always happens.
Loudermilk's one of them.
I definitely think Johnny Loudermilk is,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, it's hard for him to get in the face of other players when he's saying, I should have been benched, I was so bad.
Yeah.
And he was bad. He's a
Oh.
great kid.
Yeah.
He's a,
And we have totally inexperienced linebackers. And we've talked about how good last year's 3 linebackers were. Now we see
exactly. Yeah, you're right.
demonstratively how good they were by comparison. Josie Jewell will be really good, Bo Bauer will be really
Yep.
good, but they
I think
never,
Spearman's
they've
gonna be a
never played
defensive end.
before.
I think it's-
Reggie Spearman's got to change position.
Well, I think eventually he's a
He's
defensive,
not-
I think
he
he'll grow
cannot
into
play
be a,
linebacker.
I think he grows into a defensive end.
Move him up to defensive end
Yeah.
the same way we did with Aaron Campman and
Yes.
Matt Roth, who turned in, that made their career.
Reggie, if you notice, he's getting
Roth
thicker.
especially.
Yes, he is.
And he's only 18. His body's still growing. I mean, he's kind of growing into what he's
He's
going
still
to be.
just a kid.
But Bo Bauer's a great story.
Yes.
He's a good player, but
Unbelievable.
the fact that he is starting though, that kind of shows you where they are linebacker wise. A
No
walk-on from
kidding.
Westman, that's no knock on him either.
No.
No.
That's no knock on
He's
him.
done very well.
But it's a knock on the recruiting.
Yeah, it is. And that's not his fault. I mean, but he's going to be a really good player. He's just not there yet, right?
How does a walk-on start at linebacker?
In this day and age, it's
As a redshirt freshman.
as
Yeah.
a redshirt freshman.
And normally, walk-ons would start by the time they're juniors or seniors,
Yeah.
if they've done really
The
well.
Matt Tobin story,
But
stuff
as a
like that.
redshirt
As a
freshman?
And, yeah, I mean,
Holy
and Josie
smokes.
Jewell was a late offer. They
He
wanted
was.
him to walk on initially, but he
Yeah.
got an offer real late, and he's right up there too.
He's gonna be good, too.
He is gonna be good, because he's got that nasty
He's got
motor.
some speed.
And he's got some speed too, and he's nasty. And I say that in a
Is he?
good way. He's mean. He's a mean football. I've heard that from a number of people. He's the kind of guy,
I
you
like that
push
in a
him, he's
football
gonna be
player.
right back in your face. You know, that, and some of that, you.
What year is Josie Jewell?
It's a redshirt
Redshirt
freshman.
freshman.
He also?
Yes.
Okay.
From Decorum.
Yes. And
Well-
one of the last kids in the class to get a scholarship.
Yeah, I remember that. We need more Matt Roths on this team.
Now, Matt Roth was a 4-star that could have gone everywhere. That's what they're having trouble getting. Everyone talks about Kirk rebuilt this program just with, I mean, he had some, Derek Robertson was a huge recruit. Abdul Hodge was a big recruit. Matt Roth was a big recruit. They've gotten some good, I mean, Adrian Claiborne was a huge recruit. Christian Ballard was a huge.
And
it's not
all
like-
those guys either are playing in the NFL or
Or
have,
chose not to. Like Christian Ballard, he quit.
did he?
Yeah, he quit playing.
He retired this year.
Now he's suing the league, I believe, last I heard.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I think a lot of them.
Well, Matt Roth had a good
Yeah.
NFL career. The other guys you mentioned are having,
I've heard Matt
I
Roth,
thought Roth was a really
He was.
good,
oh, yeah.
really good.
I think
After he changed positions.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was,
He was
lied-
quite mediocre as a
linebacker.
linebacker.
He
But
couldn't,
when
yeah.
they moved him
Yeah.
up to defensive end,
He just said
really
rush the
excelled.
quarterback. I've heard he's training to be a fireman in Chicago, and Tom Zibikowski
Matt Roth
just,
is?
that's what I've heard. I don't know if, Tom Zibikowski, remember him, that
Yeah,
guy, he
yeah.
just became a Chicago fireman.
Really?
neat stories.
Yeah, it
Good for them.
is.
I'd heard that Roth was thinking about doing that. You
There
know,
was a nice story on the news last night about Aaron Campman, who was talking to an elementary school in Dubuque, wearing his Packers jersey.
oh, I'm sure that excited them. He helps at Solon.
Right?
Yeah, he's
Assistant coach at Solon. Yeah, there's a lot of Hawkeyes. I mean, Matt Hughes' staff out at Clear Creek is mostly Iowa guys.
Yeah.
He's done a
Who-
heck of a job.
Who's
out
on
there,
his
too.
staff at Clear
His
Creek?
father,
But who are the Hawkeyes?
who are the other Hawkeyes? They've told me this, and I can't remember. There's 3 of them.
If you know the
And I'm-
answer to that, please call Bud Supple after midnight tonight on his home phone.
I'm drawing a blank right now, but his father, Ronnie,
I get one of those in every show.
and I can't remember who else it is, but Matt's done a heck of a job at Clear Creek.
Oh, boy.
He's having a good
He's
year.
had a great year.
Well, and we've got, hey, Bud, what time is it?
10 after 2.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. What's going to happen against Northwestern?
I'm right now gonna pick Iowa to win on a 24-21 game, but would not be surprised at all if they lost. I mean, they're 3-6 in the last 9 games against Northwestern.
What kind of team is Northwestern this year?
They're kinda like Iowa, they're not sure what they are.
Yeah, they're up and down.
I don't think they really know their identity.
They have been up and down.
They wanna run sometimes, they pass, they're just not sure what they are.
Which is kind of like Minnesota, the next game.
But
After
Minnesota knows its identity, though.
They're not a
power-
passing team.
They're not a passing team, they're
But
a
when they
power
do
running team.
pass, they catch them.
Yeah, they don't pass much, and they were lucky to win that game last week, but some of
They
Kirk's,
were.
some of Kirk's best teams have been lucky to win. Sometimes you're lucky, and that's part
Yep.
of being good.
Yeah.
That's
that's
right.
right.
It got so hard to watch that Hawkeye game last week. There were points where it was unwatchable.
You know, another red flag from last week is Marshall Kane missed an extra point.
He
It
did?
didn't matter because there was a penalty.
Right.
He
You're right,
had-
though.
he
You got
had a
it.
second
But that gets
shot,
in his head.
But the first one,
But that doesn't count.
Right.
His streak is still
But it
alive.
counts
Yeah.
mentally, you know, it'll
Yeah.
make him wonder, because he's been building up that
it counts
confidence.
mentally for the rest of us,
Sure.
we'll be nervous.
Well, I wanna
I
know-
thought we were by that.
See, a
Yeah.
couple times there, I don't know why we didn't go for 2. It would've cut a,
After the touchdown, I don't remember the situations, Bud.
I will say,
I
with-
watched a game just a couple weeks ago, a Big Ten team. They went twice for 2 and got it. I
Well,
think it was Minnesota.
I think they made a bad decision, but it's a sort of decision that debatable either way. When they kicked the field goal,
Yeah.
late in the,
You had to come
Oh,
away
to
with
cut it to
something.
7?
they
Yeah.
cut it to 7.
You had to come away with
We,
something.
we were at the 5-yard line, and the odds are we're not gonna get that good a chance to score a
Yeah.
touchdown. We needed both a touchdown.
yeah, I
and a
could see
field
that
goal.
argument.
You can kick a field goal easier from 40 or 50 yards
And
than
then
you
if
can
you
score
get
a
the ball
touchdown.
back, all you have to do is go
But-
to the lane for a
But
field goal.
different coaches would make
Yeah, I
that
know.
decision differently, so.
The announcers said it was the right call.
They did, yeah.
Say,
Well, then it must have been the
like
wrong.
this,
That's what I was getting at.
The Adam kid that started
For Regina?
Regina, is he fast enough to play big-time football?
I don't think it's a matter of, I think it's more size.
Size.
I mean,
He's not tall
Tall.
he's
enough.
not tall enough, but he could be a heck of a Division III linebacker or whatever they do with him, but I just don't think he's quite big
Okay.
enough to be Division I.
I still want to know how Purdue went to Minnesota and played them
Purdue's-
so
Well,
well.
they've changed
They've
quarterbacks.
changed quarterbacks, and they're getting better. That
In the
coach,
last 2 games, they've played,
well, they're gonna get better, because that coach is gonna be able to recruit. They're
They
getting better.
look very game.
Iowa was very lucky that they played them when they did.
Oh, I guess.
Daryl Hazel will have them competing for a Big Ten title within a couple of years.
And he will recruit in the South. He
Yeah.
will get, he won't go down there and get guys that, hey, you wanna go to Purdue over Alabama? He'll go down there and get guys that are maybe gonna go to Arkansas. They're gonna be a lot faster in a couple of years, you watch. I think he'll get
How's
Indiana,
Arkansas doing?
Not well.
not well. He's 0-12
He's 0 for
now.
the SEC.
He's got one more year, I think, if they don't show improvement next year, I think he'll probably be gone.
He'll be gone.
But,
He will too. That's the SEC.
but he'll go somewhere.
but he's already won the lot, I mean, he's made enough money, it doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
That's right.
financially wise, he's set, that's what happens with all this.
So, can this Hawkeye team go to Illinois and lose?
I think they could, but if they lose to Illinois, then
Oh.
the wheels are falling off. If
Yeah.
they lose
Kirk,
to Iowa.
don't you think we're literally in the place where sometimes people say you could win every
Yes.
game
Yeah.
and lose every game?
I agree.
Yes.
And
Right.
I said that after the game Saturday. I said, this team could lose every game they have left except Illinois.
No, I think we could lose at Illinois.
And then, yeah,
Now,
then
if
I
they
got
were-
to thinking about that.
If they were playing at Wisconsin or at Nebraska,
Oh, yeah.
would be really hard
Those,
pressed to
they'll be
pick those.
very tough.
Yeah, here though, I give them a chance.
But I never seen Kurt Ferentz as mad as he was Saturday.
I haven't either.
And
He was mad.
He was mad, and he was mad at his team.
He was mad at his team, his
That's
coaches.
Where did you see him, Matt? On the field, you mean?
Yes.
Oh,
Post-game.
I saw it in the post-game press
Post-game
conference.
press
It was
conference.
totally different Kirk. He was pissed off.
I've
Did I
never
say
seen
that?
him that way.
Yeah, you
He was
got
upset.
pissed off.
He was upset.
He was
didn't say that.
embarrassed, and then that turned into anger.
Yeah.
And
You know,
then
part of
his-
that's his son is a major part of what their problem was Saturday. That's a delicate situation for him to handle PR-wise.
So what does Kirk do since that game?
Work and get better.
But
Work
do
and get
you
better.
make these guys suffer in practice?
I don't think that's,
No.
no.
You just practice tackling and
You
blocking.
get better. That's all he'll say. We go back to the drawing board, we work to get better. There is,
Earl, what would Forrest Evashevsky done after a game like that?
he'd beat up some of the players.
Yeah.
But I don't think Kirk,
A few in the locker.
I don't think Kirk can physically beat up his players.
Those days are gone too.
What's the story about, was it Big Bob Lewis that went in and was gonna tell?
Mac Lewis.
Mac
Was
Lewis.
gonna tell him off as, man, I'm going in there, and he goes in there and Evashevsky looks up and he said he just melted.
It probably
Mac was a
happened.
big man.
My mom loved Evie. I grew up, Evie, there was a phrase other than my dad, that was my mom's favorite man on this face. She
Really?
loved Forrest Evashevsky. Yeah, she loved him. I heard about Evie when I was 2 years old, started hearing about Evie.
That's kind of neat.
And he lived right over there on Summit Street, right down from where I lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We heard stories of Bump Elliott growing up around the table, he and his brother Pete.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Two really good football
So,
players.
Yes,
West Eye had we're going to switch gears to high school here in the last couple minutes, but West Eye had another big win last week. They beat Davenport North rather handily.
5-3.
42-14, yeah, and West High is 3-0 in the district, and they are going to have, all three city teams are home this weekend for senior night. This is the last week of the regular season. So, West High is going to host Pleasant Valley, who is also 5-3 and 3-0 in the district, so that's a big game.
Big game.
And then City High
Has to
played
win.
very well against Cedar Rapids Wash, who's one of the top teams in large school 4A in Iowa, and that was at Cedar Rapids Wash, and they lost 28-7, and they're going to host Muscatine this week, who is 6-2 and 3-1 in the district. And yeah, City High has to win this game to be
You know, I
able to
think
make state.
there actually is a scenario.
There's,
right.
where
they could get in at
they
2
could
and
make it.
which is ridiculous, but they could get in at 2
Well,
and
even 3 is ridiculous.
Three, well, you should have a winning record.
Well, what is the district City High is in?
6.
District 6, yeah.
Oh, I know that. The number.
But who's in it?
Who's in it?
Oh.
Nobody knows
Atumwa.
who's in it.
Burlington,
Muscatine,
Muscatine,
West,
Cedar Rapids Prairie.
Cedar Rapids Prairie,
No,
yeah.
not
it's-
West.
not
Yeah,
West.
I mean, the
Cedar
playoff,
Rapids Prairie is probably the next.
Cedar Rapids, Washington.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but they're in another district, right?
No,
Prairie's
they're-
in the
they're-
district with City.
They're in the same as City High.
yeah. And if
Oh.
City High wins against Muscatine, they will have a winning district record.
Yep, and they might even get a bye at 3 and 6. Who
Yeah.
knows? No, I say that kidding.
Now, here's the real shame. Regina has to host Pella Christian, who's not a bad team. They're 6-2 and 4-1 in the district. And let's just say Regina loses. They don't
No,
win their district.
Don't say that.
No, and it's not going to happen. But this is a good Pella Christian team.
Well, they've got.
So you're saying Drew Cook may play in the second half, is what you're saying? I think Drew will play
Let
in
me
the second half.
verify. Washington of Iowa was one of their off teams, and they beat them pretty handily.
But Washington's a 3A school?
Right.
I think what you're saying is this isn't gonna be like one of those 3 stretches they had late
No.
recently.
No.
But
They'll
we're
have to
in
play,
the
but I'd be
Worst
stunned.
district that I've ever seen.
The
for
Regina district?
Yeah, I'd be stunned.
Oh,
if
I
they
don't know,
win by
bud.
3
That 2A
touchdowns.
district they were in was
Oh, this
terrible.
one is just as bad. I'm like Pat, for people to be leaving after the first quarter.
Well, they don't leave after the first
Well,
quarter.
Some of it,
First
it's
half.
not because the other teams are so bad, it's because Regina
It's
is
so
so
good.
good.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's part of the problem.
That's a
Now, here's
well-put
the
point.
worst part. If Regina wins Friday, then they would host a game on Wednesday, the first round of the playoffs. And then, if West Branch wins their first round of the playoffs, Regina would have to play at West Branch the following
Wouldn't that be
Monday.
fun?
That would be good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun?
I hate to say it, Pat, we're out of time.
All right.
So we'd love to have you come back and talk
Okay.
more. You are very knowledgeable on the Hawks and high school sports, and Pat White, you too, come back next week. I'm Dirk Keller, thanking Bud Supple and Earl Murphy and the two Pats for being here. Thanks to Joe Murphy behind the cameras, and thanks to you for tuning in every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. You can catch this guy on KCJJ 1630 radio every Monday morning at 9.
Monday, Friday, and Saturdays.
There you go. And Saturdays at 8 a.m. On behalf of all these guys, we want to thank you for tuning in. And remember this, either you're a Hawk or you're not. Go Hawks. Thanks for watching.